Imagine this. You're sitting across from a man who has stared into the future so long that the present feels like background noise, not future like a motivational poster, future like a pressure chamber, real stakes, real mass, real consequences, the kind of mind that treats impossible things like engineering tasks and treats human limits like temporary inconveniences. And he's right there across from you, calm on the surface, running hot underneath like a rocket on the pad, pretending it's not full of controlled violence. And I'm watching him the way you watch a system that's been pushed past its safe operating range for too long. Because here's the part people miss. When someone builds their entire identity around saving the species, when the mission isn't a job, it's a religion. There's a shadow cost nobody applauds. The public sees launches, headlines, wins, but the private version is different. The private version is what happens when the noise dies, when the last meeting ends, when the last tweet stops scrolling, and the room finally goes quiet. Quiet is where the real bill arrives, not a money bill, a human bill. And the truth is, you can't pay that one with success. So it starts like any conversation with Elon would start. Safe topics, clean topics, topics with measurable outputs, rockets, batteries, neural links, the Fermi paradox, that haunting question that keeps showing up like a glitch in the cosmic code. Why is the universe so quiet? Where is everybody? Why do we scan the sky and hear nothing back? But even while he's talking, I can feel the deeper thing under it. Because the Fermi paradox isn't just astrophysics, it's a metaphor. It's what happens when you can shout into infinity and still hear nothing. And some people, especially people like him, are living that paradox on Earth, surrounded by people, surrounded by attention, surrounded by millions of eyes, and still quiet, still alone. So we talk for hours the way two overloaded systems talk when they're trying not to overheat. We stay on the surface because the surface is safe. The surface has rules. The surface has an escape hatch. But eventually, the surface runs out. You run out of clean topics. You run out of clever deflections. You run out of tech as a substitute for intimacy. And then you're left with the only thing that matters, the human thing, the thing that can't be scaled, the thing that can't be optimized, the thing you can't brute force with intelligence, connection. And that's when I realize I have to ask the question, not the easy one, not how do we get to Mars, not when will full self-driving be solved, not what's the next big breakthrough, the hard one, the one that strips the myth off the man. I look at him, really look, past the familiar half smile, past the armor, past the posture of someone who's trained himself to never be cornered emotionally, and I say it quietly, not like an interviewer, but like a person who recognizes something in another person. I say, what if the price of saving humanity is that you end up alone? And instantly, silence. Not awkward silence, not let me think of a good answer silence, instant silence. The kind of silence that happens when a question lands in the exact place someone has been avoiding, the kind of silence that isn't empty. It's full, full of memories, full of loss, full of nights nobody clapped for, full of internal footage the public never sees. He doesn't react like someone offended. He reacts like someone exposed, like I just pulled the emergency panel off the wall and showed everyone the wiring. And you can literally see the simulation engine in his mind start running at maximum speed. He's calculating, he's modeling outcomes, he's searching for a way to answer without bleeding, because that's what people like him do. If there's a path that avoids pain, the brain will try to find it. But here's the problem. Some questions don't have a safe trajectory. Some questions don't have an abort sequence, and this was one of them. So he just sits there, eyes focused somewhere slightly behind me, like he's looking at a version of himself he doesn't like to visit. And in that moment, I understand something with brutal clarity. The scariest thing for a man who can solve almost anything isn't a technical failure. It's an emotional one, because technical failure is data. Emotional failure feels like identity collapse. I don't fill the silence. I let it do what silence is designed to do, pressure test. And after what feels like a full minute, but is probably only a few seconds, he exhales, slow, controlled, like a pressure valve opening on a tank that's been running too hot. And he says, almost to himself, yeah, just that, yeah. And that yeah isn't agreement, it's recognition. It's the sound of someone hearing their private fear spoken out loud by another human being for the first time. Then he goes quiet again because the next part is harder, the why, the how, the what it does to you. And finally he speaks, voice lower than before. He says, most people think success insulates you. Pause. They think once you have enough wins, the loneliness gets smaller. Pause. It doesn't. That last word lands like a dropped tool in a silent factory. It doesn't. Because he's right. Success doesn't erase loneliness. It sharpens it. It refines it into something more precise. Because now you don't just feel lonely, you understand the math of it. You realize how rare real connection actually is when everybody wants something from you. Spotlight, proximity, access, a story, a piece of the myth. People love the idea of you. Very few want the man, and the man knows that. So the mission becomes safer than people, because rockets don't betray you. Physics doesn't ghost you. Mars doesn't leave because you worked too much. And when you start living like that, when you start trusting systems more than humans, you can become emotionally airtight, a sealed capsule, perfect for survival, terrible for intimacy. So I push a little deeper, not aggressively, but honestly, like first principles. Strip everything down. I say, well, so what happens when someone tries to get close, not to the mission, to you? And the silence comes back again, instant, familiar. He blinks, and I see it, the truth arriving before he's ready to say it. Then he says something that feels like a confession wrapped in engineering language. He says, when you're obsessed with something big, it's like you're always halfway gone. Halfway gone. That phrase is brutal because it explains everything. It explains why people can sit next to you and still feel abandoned. It explains why relationships die even when nobody did anything wrong. It explains why love becomes a negotiation with a ghost because the body is there, but the mind is in orbit, and orbit is a lonely place. So I ask the question that cuts even deeper, the one that turns the whole thing inward. I ask, do you ever worry that the thing that drives you, the darkness, never leaves? And he freezes. Because now we're not talking about the world. We're talking about childhood. We're talking about the internal shadow, whatever shaped him, whatever hardened him, whatever made him decide that being useful was safer than being soft. And I can see him fighting the instinct to intellectualize it, to turn it into an abstract conversation about biology or history or civilization. But the truth is personal, and personal truth has gravity. It pulls everything into it. And that's when I drop the real question, the one that your reference script revolves around, the one that makes the moment cinematic, because it's not about rockets anymore. It's about what rockets can't fix. I say if someone saw the real you, not the myth, not the meme, not the mission, would you believe they could still choose you? Instant silence again, but this time it's different. This time the silence isn't him thinking, it's him feeling. And you can tell because his face changes in a way that logic can't control. His eyes shift, his throat tightens, he doesn't look at the cameras, he doesn't perform, he just sits there as if the question forced him to meet himself in a room with no exits. And in that quiet, I realized the real paradox. You can spend your whole life trying to prevent extinction and still be terrified of being truly seen by one person, because being seen is risk. It's high delta V. It costs energy. It costs ego. It costs control. And control is the one thing high performers cling to like oxygen. He finally speaks, and his voice is barely above a whisper. He says, I don't know, not I don't know like a strategist. I don't know like a man who has outpaced his own humanity. Then he adds the line that explains the entire thing. He says, people don't love you. They love the idea of you. Now pause. And sometimes you start doing it too. And that is the most dangerous part, because once you start loving the idea of yourself, the builder, the savior, the disruptor, you can lose access to the real self underneath. You become a machine optimized for survival, optimized for output, optimized for impact. But machines don't connect. Machines execute. So I don't rush the moment. I don't fill the silence with more words. I let it sit because this is the part that holds attention, the part that feels forbidden, like we're hearing something we weren't supposed to hear. And then he says something that hits like a punch precisely because it's not poetic, it's operational. He says, "It's hard to let anyone in when you don't even know how long you'll be here emotionally." That sentence explains what loving someone like him feels like, because the person isn't consistently available, not because they don't care, but because the internal weather is violent. Storms, pressure systems, a mind that won't stop calculating failure modes of companies, of rockets, of civilization, of relationships. And then, this is where the reference energy peaks. He admits the thing nobody wants to admit, that vulnerability isn't sexy, it's terrifying, it's inefficient. It has no measurable ROI, but it's the only thing that makes any of the rest of it matter. You can build rockets, you can wire brains to machines, you can save the planet with sustainable energy, you can put humans on Mars. But if at the end of the day you're still sitting alone in a big house, staring at a ceiling, wondering why nobody stayed, then what did you actually win? So I ask one last question, the closing question, the one that doesn't chase drama, it chases truth. I say, if you could say one thing to the person who tried to love you and couldn't reach you, what would it be? And for the first time, he doesn't look like a man fighting the world. He looks like a man remembering. And memory has weight. He stares somewhere far away, past the room, past the lights, like he's looking at a door he didn't open in time. His voice cracks just slightly, when he answers. He says, "I'm sorry." So, two words, but they carry years of unsent messages. They carry every time someone asked for presence and got distance, every time someone wanted warmth and got logic, every time someone needed a hand and got a plan. And the silence that follows that "I'm sorry" isn't empty either. It's the silence of a realization settling in that the hardest engineering problem isn't Mars, it's not reusable rockets, it's not AI alignment, it's not energy, it's the internal system, the capacity to be seen without collapsing, the ability to stay in the room when honesty burns, the courage to let another person stand in the storm with you, knowing the storm never fully stops. And that's what that one question did. It didn't create drama, it created ignition. It took two trajectories, two isolated orbits, and for a moment, it forced alignment. Not a fairy tale, not a promise, a recognition that the mission isn't only out there among the stars, it's right here, in the quiet space between two people who finally stop pretending. Because the truth is, if we build a multi-planet civilization and bring the same emotional poverty with us, the same fear of intimacy, the same obsession that eats our ability to love, then we didn't save humanity, we just exported loneliness to another planet. So, yeah, Elon Musk wasn't ready for that question, not because it attacked him, because it asked him to do the one thing he can't engineer, let someone in. And when that question landed, the room went instantly silent, not as weakness, but as proof that something human was still alive under all that armor. The silence was the sound of the myth stepping aside, and the man finally breathing.